Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill have sent the government funding bill for 2023 to the White House for President Biden to sign into law. Emergency money for Ukraine, increased funding for multiple federal agencies, and a variety of community projects. The total, roughly $1.7 trillion. Here's NTD's Melina Wisecup with a closer look.
The government funding levels for 2023 passed the House today on mainly a party line vote on a vote of 225 to 201. Just 9 Republicans voted with Democrats to pass it. The majority of Republicans were opposed to it, as expected. Those Republicans say they feel this 4,000-page bill was rushed with fuel inflation and also lacks investments in critical areas such as addressing the unprecedented surge at the southwest border.
We are giving $410 million to 5 Middle Eastern countries for border security, while billions of dollars of our own border protection are prohibited. They are prohibited, Mr. Speaker, from being used to enhance border security.
The bill does include a $3.2 billion increase for Homeland Security to create a more humane and safe environment for both non-citizens seeking asylum and our nation's dedicated frontline law enforcement managing our borders. Democrats calling the bill a successful end to a year filled with bipartisan victories.
Yes, indeed, the goose is getting fat. We have a big bill here because we have big needs for our country.
But there's funding for projects that some call irresponsible.
For example, there's $2.35 million for the Leahy Center in Vermont, named after Senator Patrick Leahy.
I mean, the bottom line is over 100 members on that side requested community projects that were fully vetted. We're not questioning whether they're good or not.
Millions dedicated to projects like LGBTQ centers and museums in New York, infrastructure for electric vehicles in California, and a Michelle Obama trail in Georgia. In addition, tens of billions of dollars for Ukraine and a reform of election law. And President Biden today signed a continuing resolution to avoid a government shutdown over the holidays. He is expected to sign this $1.7 trillion government funding package into law after he returns after Christmas. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
In an annual defense bill repealing the military vaccine mandate, being sent to the White House today for the president's signature despite his opposition to some of the measures. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more.
Days before the year-end deadline, President Biden signs the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, for 2023. It authorizes $858 billion in annual defense funding. The act will raise the pay for service members, fund support for Ukraine and Taiwan, and notably end the military's COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Biden said in a Friday statement that the NDAA provides vital benefits for military personnel and supports our country's national defense, foreign affairs, and homeland security. But the White House has said that Biden views the removal of the vaccine mandate as a mistake.
We believe that it is a mistake. What we saw happen on the NDAA as it relates to the vaccine mandate.
Republican lawmakers, meanwhile, are touting the repeal of the vaccine mandate as a win in the NDAA. Citing threats by China and Russia, Senator Marsha Blackburn wrote in a statement today, "Our military should be focused on confronting the new axis of evil, not woke political mandates." Blackburn also claims that thousands of service members were fired for not getting vaccinated. While the NDAA ends the military vaccine mandate, it does not reinstate those who were discharged for refusing to get the vaccine. And some Republicans have vowed to continue the fight.
We need to give the soldiers back pay and their families the back pay that they deserve as well.
Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And we had a chance to sit down with Benny Johnson, columnist and host of The Benny Show. He's currently serving as the Chief Creative Officer at Turning Point USA. I asked Johnson about the House January 6 committee referring criminal charges against former President Donald Trump, what his thoughts are on this, and where could things go from here.
So, a couple things. One, with I'm a big social media guy, so I follow what's going on Twitter very closely. And you can sit there and look at exactly what they did with Trump. What they were doing is burying the evidence. Because the first tweets on the top of his account when they reinstated his account is he's saying, everyone go home peacefully. Nobody fight cops. Nobody do anything against the Capitol Police. These are his last tweets before they nuke his account, right, and silence him forever. They want you to forget that that's what the president said. I was personally there at the speech. Front row, January 6th. I was sitting there, and Donald Trump gives the big speech, and I'm listening to him in real life, as close as I am to you, sitting there, say, go peacefully to the Capitol, march peacefully to the Capitol. So what we always knew this was where it was going to head. How are they possibly going to get criminal indictment here for free speech? I mean, what he's doing is he's practicing free speech, and he's doing it very responsibly. On the other hand, I can give you, if this becomes the new normal, then I can give you a ton of libs that need to be prosecuted immediately for their rhetoric against conservatives. I mean, we can start with Maxine Waters. We can go all the way down the list for incitement against conservatives that leads to actual real violence. The only person killed on January 6th was a Trump supporter. So I think that it's going to be a massive overreach. Liz Cheney's seemingly losing a lot of the support. That's the reports that I've been hearing, that she's making it way too Trump-centric and that they're viewing it as like a campaign tactic for her. But nonetheless, the man's innocent. The man's innocent. Like, what are you going to charge him with?
What do you think the Department of Justice is ultimately going to do? And if they do decide to prosecute, will it serve to really further divide the country?
Yes. I mean, yes. This is, of course, totally and completely unprecedented. But that it just speaks to the existential threat that Trump is to the establishment, and that's why they're going at him, and they're using every tool that they have in their tool chest. They're making up tools, right? So we learned that in Trump's banning. They just manufactured new tools to hurt Donald Trump. Donald Trump mentally broke these people in 2016, and so what happened was in 2016 they went about, the modern day left went about breaking or fully turning inoperable every institution that led to Trump's ascension. Did they allow Trump's ascension? Did they artificially promote Trump's ascension? No, they just allowed for it. Social media is one, corporate media is another. They covered the Hillary Clinton scandal. That was enough, right? So they're doing that with our election systems, and they're doing that with the Department of Justice. And I keep coming back to this, but what I find particularly fascinating about Donald Trump's banning on social media was that his own Justice Department, these people work for the executive, his own Justice Department was calling for his banning. The people that work for Trump were the ones censoring him. We haven't digested that. We haven't, that hasn't sunk into the zeitgeist yet as conservatives to understand how deep this sewer hole goes. And so Trump's own administration was working to ban him. That's a reality. That's the facts. We have the hard evidence. And so that's what you're up against. You have to fight. You have to fight on that level.
To your point, you're referring to the Twitter files. I want to get your thoughts on those, as well as, to your point, where do you go? Who do you go to from here?
Right. So it's a lot of work. Do you think you get rid of this rot overnight? If this was in your own home, and you went down and you have someone come into your own home and go down to the very basement of your house, and that rot is all the way through that's right. You have to rip up the foundation, baby. You got to rip up the foundation. And it was really interesting if you read our founding documents, because our founding documents give you the roadmap for it. I'm not calling for the overthrow of the United States government, but our founding documents say when a government ceases to represent its own people and only represent the ideology of an oligarchy that wishes to oppress the people, well, then it has to be done away with. Again, I'm not calling for the overthrow of the government, but I am calling for the doing away with of institutions that have been so shot through with rot that you need to start over. And you need, for this republic to function, you have to have some things that we agree on. Polling shows there's nothing we agree on anymore. No one trusts the FBI. No one trusts the DOJ. The left doesn't trust cops. There's no institutions we agree on anymore. There's nothing. Betty White's gone. That was the last thing. Sadly, Betty White died this year. That was the last thing we all agreed on. And so there has to be something, there has to be a truth that at the very least becomes the basis for us to function. And I believe that an honest remaking of some of the federal organizations, or maybe just doing away with them, would be a good start.
The Chinese Communist Party is retaliating against the United States for sanctioning Chinese officials. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said in a statement that 2 top U.S. government advisors would be banned from entering China. That's Todd Stein and Miles Yu. They'll have no access to their assets in China and will not be able to contact people or organizations in the country. No specific accusations were given. Stein is a staff director at the Congressional Executive Commission on China, and Miles Yu is a senior academic who served as key China advisor under former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. This comes as a retaliation to the U.S.'s sanctions earlier this month on 5 Chinese officials. 2 of them had human rights abuses against Tibetans, and 1 violated human rights of Falun Gong practitioners in China. The DEA has just announced the amount of fentanyl they seized in the course of this calendar year. The agency seized more than 379 million doses of fentanyl powder and fentanyl-laced pills. The DEA said in a press release this week that they captured more than 10,000 pounds of fentanyl powder and more than 50 million fake prescription pills laced with fentanyl. The agency noted that the drugs are enough to kill every single American and that the fake pills can be hard to differentiate from legitimate prescription drugs. The DEA administrator said the drug seizures, quote, reflect the DEA's unwavering commitment to protect Americans and save lives by tenaciously pursuing those responsible for the trafficking of fentanyl across the United States. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.